When my father stood at the podium during his retirement party, he declared, "My son will inherit the company. As for my daughter, maybe she'll manage to get a job at Wendy's." The entire room erupted in laughter, including my brother, and in that moment I realized I had just been buried alive in the humiliation of my own family. But what they didn't know was that my mother had left behind a secret meant only for me, a secret powerful enough to bring down everyone who had ever underestimated me. Stay with me until the end of this story, because this isn't just about reclaiming justice for myself. It's proof that sometimes a woman's silence is the greatest storm her enemies will ever face. Chapter 1. The Retirement Party. The public humiliation. I still remember vividly the moment when everything inside me shattered. It wasn't the day I lost my mother, nor the endless nights I sat alone in an empty room. It was that very day, the day my father decided to publicly humiliate me in front of everyone we had ever known. His retirement party was held grandly at the Riverside Hotel. The entire hall glowed under the chandeliers, filled with sleek black suits, glittering evening gowns, laughter mixing with the clinking of glasses. Everyone came to celebrate Daniel Hammond, the man who had built Hammond Industries for over 40 years. To many, he was the model of success, the embodiment of business acumen. But to me, he was the man who always made me feel I was never good enough. I sat at the table adjusting the navy blue dress I had spent a week choosing. Even though I had prepared so carefully, it still felt tighter, more suffocating amidst all those scrutinizing gazes. My heart raced when my father stepped up to the podium. He looked radiant with his neatly combed silver hair, that confident smile of a man standing at the pinnacle of his career, ready to pass the crown to his successor. He began telling old stories, the struggles of the early days, the sleepless nights juggling hundreds of tasks, the near-bankrupt deals that somehow turned into triumphs. Everyone listened intently as if he were recounting an epic. I forced myself to smile, to clap in rhythm, though deep down I carried a gnawing fear that when he mentioned me, it would be nothing but ridicule. And then the moment arrived. His voice rang out proud and resonant. After 42 years, I am honored to announce the successor of Hammond Industries, my son Noah. Thunderous applause erupted. Noah rose to his feet, chest puffed out his face, glowing as if he had just won an Oscar. He raised his glass, soaking in the admiration, smiling with smug pride. And me, I sat there, hands clasped tightly in my lap, choking down that familiar bitterness. I had known I would not be included in this moment of glory, but I hadn't expected my father to turn me into the evening's punchline. He swept his gaze across the room before letting it rest on me. "Some of you may be wondering about my daughter Sophia." Several heads turned toward me, and my throat tightened. My father smiled, eyes twinkling, as if he were about to deliver a well-timed joke. "Sophia has chosen a different path. She's not cut out for business. Maybe she's better suited for Wendy's if she manages to show up on time." The room burst into laughter. At first just a few chuckles, then a roaring wave of laughter. I heard Aunt Carol's shrill giggles from behind me, someone else slapping their thigh in delight. Even the servers pouring wine were laughing. My cheeks burned, my heart constricted painfully. But my lips curved into that fake smile I had perfected over the years, the smile of someone used to surviving family gatherings, where she was always the disappointment. I turned to Noah, hoping he would say something, anything, to ease the humiliation. But no, he raised his glass higher voice, dripping with mockery. "Yes, let's toast to Father, the man who built the empire I now have the honor of inheriting. And to Sophia, good luck with your next fast food career. Let's hope this time you pass the training round." More laughter exploded louder than before. Some even clapped along in rhythm. I scanned the room, familiar faces I'd grown up with, now staring at me, with pity mixed with ridicule. I spotted Jessica, my best friend from high school, her lips pressed tight, her eyes carrying unspoken sympathy, but helpless all the same. In that moment, I couldn't tell what hurt. More the public humiliation from my father and brother, or the deafening silence of everyone else. They all just sat there, letting me be the spectacle. I stood up. The screech of the chair dragging across the marble floor cut through the laughter, forcing it to stop abruptly. Hundreds of eyes locked onto me, waiting for my reaction. Some expected me to scream, others to burst into tears and storm out. But instead I simply lifted my champagne glass high, my voice unnervingly calm to family. I took a sip, set the glass down, and sat back. The party resumed laughter and chatter, quickly filling the brief void. But I knew. Something inside me had broken beyond repair. From the far table, I caught the gaze of Ryan, the family's longtime lawyer. He wasn't laughing, nor did he look away. He just looked at me, tapping his finger lightly against his glass of water, as if signaling something. I didn't yet understand, but in his eyes I saw something different. Not pity, but anticipation. That night, as I left the party, one thing was clear. They could think me weak. They could turn me into a joke. But I would no longer remain the overlooked one. One day I would show them all just how gravely this family had underestimated me. Chapter 2. Memories of Mother and Silent Sacrifices. That night, as I drove back to my small apartment, the echoes of laughter from the party still rang in my ears. Each time I recalled my father's smug expression and Noah's condescending smile, my stomach twisted painfully. But amidst that pain, another memory surged back, one I had never forgotten, the image of my mother frail on her deathbed, still holding my hand to whisper her final words. 3 years ago, my life veered off course when my mother was diagnosed with late-stage pancreatic cancer. I still remember that day clearly. It was pouring rain. Father was consumed with work as usual, and Noah was preparing for a conference in New York. Only I sat in the cold, sterile hospital room, listening as the doctor delivered the devastating news. My world collapsed, but I knew I had no right to break down. I decided then I would stay with my mother until the very end. I packed up everything in Chicago, my small apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, the marketing job I had once dreamed of, the late nights out with friends. I left it all behind and returned to my childhood home. I moved back into my old bedroom, its purple walls, faded horse posters, still clinging to them from my schoolgirl days. Nothing had changed there, except me. I was no longer the little girl I once was. From then on, my life revolved around hospitals, medications, and my mother's relentless pain. I learned how to read prescriptions, how to brew ginger tea to ease her nausea, how to keep calm when she writhed after each chemotherapy session. I became her nurse, her medical record keeper, and her companion through every sleepless night. And Noah, he visited twice a week, precisely twice. He always brought a bouquet of fresh flowers to place on her nightstand, stayed for about 47 minutes, filled the silence with stories of work my mother was too exhausted to hear, then left with a quick kiss on her forehead. Father made his attempts on Sunday mornings, squeezing visits between golf games and the evening news. But he never stayed up through the night rubbing her back, never cooked her a bowl of porridge, never sat by her side when she cried out of fear. All of that was mine to bear. One night as I brewed tea for her, she gripped my hand. Her bony fingers trembled, but her eyes were sharper than ever. "My daughter," she said, her voice hoarse from medication, "you don't have to sacrifice your whole life for others, but if one day they make you feel small, don't beg. Don't plead for their recognition. Stay silent and rise above them." I froze. Back then, I didn't fully understand. I thought she only wanted me to be stronger, but later I realized she knew. She knew Father and Noah would never see me as worthy, and she wanted me to find my own way to transcend them. When she died, the entire town came to say goodbye. The church was packed, funeral flowers carpeting the aisle in white. Father stood at the pulpit, speaking like the model husband, praising her as the heart of the family. Noah spoke of her wisdom and grace, as if he had been the most devoted son. I sat quietly, gripping the speech I had prepared about the afternoons we laughed till our sides hurt, reading romance novels about how she taught me to bake the family's famous chocolate chip cookies. But no one invited me to speak. After the burial, I overheard Father whisper to one of his friends, Elena held everything together so perfectly, I don't know how I'll manage without her. Sophia. She's not the type who can shoulder things like her mother did. I was standing right there in the hallway, every word slicing through me like glass. That night I started packing. I no longer wanted to stay in that house where every wall reminded me that I was the extra. I moved out, renting a small apartment 20 minutes away. I still visited Father every week, still tried to hold on to some semblance of family. But the invisible distance grew wider. In every major decision, Father sought Noah's input. My role was reduced to bringing dessert to dinner. That memory surged back like a tidal wave in the night after the humiliating party. I sat in my dark apartment, staring at the ceiling, remembering my mother's words. Stay silent and rise above them. Back then, I had no idea how to rise above. I only felt like a failure, mocked and belittled by my father and brother. But I also knew my mother had prepared me for something I couldn't yet see clearly, but something that would change everything. Chapter 3, Mother's Secret and the Envelope from the Lawyer. 3 weeks after the humiliating retirement party, my life ticked on like a broken clock. By day, I went to work trying to focus on my modest marketing job at a small local company. By night, I returned to my empty apartment, ate a half-hearted dinner, and sat for hours in silence. Yet the sharp sting from that night remained. Each time I closed my eyes, I heard Father's words echo. She's better suited for Wendy's, if she manages to show up on time. One evening, I decided to sort through some old boxes I had brought from my childhood home, but never touched. When I opened an old wooden chest, I found a faded brown leather notebook. On the cover was a graceful, neat handwriting I recognized instantly my mother's. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were carefully written entries, dates, amounts of money, names of recipients. It wasn't a recipe book or a diary. It was a meticulous record of investments, contributions, share certificates, all tied to Hammond Industries. I read through page after page, my heart pounding. From the company's earliest days, Mother had quietly put in her savings, purchasing additional shares whenever the business expanded. She wasn't just the supportive wife behind her husband, as Father so often boasted in his speeches. She was a true investor, a systematic contributor, steady and unwavering for decades. I collapsed into a chair, my eyes blurring with tears. For years, everyone only spoke of Daniel Hammond, the founder, the man who carried it all. But these pages revealed another truth. Hammond Industries bore the imprint of Elena Hammond, my mother, and I knew then I could not keep this secret to myself. A few days later, while I was still uncertain what to do, my phone rang. On the screen flashed the name Ryan Mitchell, the lawyer who had served my family for over 20 years. It surprised me. He rarely reached out to me directly. His voice was deep, urgent. Sophia, I believe it's time I tell you something. Before she passed, your mother left me a sealed envelope instructing me to deliver it only when I believed you were strong enough to face it. I think that time has come. I nearly dropped the phone. An envelope, my mother left one for me. Yes. This isn't an ordinary document. I need you to meet me in person. Tomorrow, Millfield Cafe, 2 p.m. And Sophia, come alone. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at Mother's leather notebook, my hands trembling as I imagined the secrets she had kept from the family. Why entrust them only to me? Why wait until now? The next day I arrived at Millfield Cafe 10 minutes early. It was a small shop deliberately decorated in a vintage style with wooden tables and worn leather chairs. I chose a corner seat with a view of the parking lot. My heart pounded as Ryan's silver Mercedes pulled in. He walked in looking older than the last time I saw him. His suit was creased, his leather briefcase worn. He sat down across from me, placing the case on the table, his hands slightly trembling. "Thank you for coming, Sophia." I nodded, trying to keep steady. "What is this about Uncle Ryan?" He opened the briefcase and pulled out a large yellow envelope sealed with red wax. Across the front, in familiar handwriting, were the words, "For Sophia." Just seeing it made my throat tighten, my eyes burn. Ryan lowered his voice. "Your mother wrote this letter about 6 months before she passed. She also prepared certain legal documents, but instructed me not to release them to anyone, not even your father or Noah, until the right time. And I believe today is that time." I reached out and touched the envelope. The hardened wax cracked under my finger, a small sound that reverberated inside me like the opening of a door to another world of secrets. Inside were 3 handwritten pages written in blue ink. The familiar script blurred as tears welled in my eyes. I began to read, and it was as if my mother's voice rose from each line. "My beloved daughter, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. I know your father and Noah will always belittle you, but remember, that will never define who you are. Over the years, I have quietly prepared, not out of vengeance, but to give you what rightfully belongs to you. The majority of the company's shares have already been transferred into your name. Along with the new will, you now hold controlling power over Hammond Industries." My hand shook as I lowered the letter. I looked up at Ryan, speechless. He nodded, confirming it all. "Your mother planned every step. All documents are legal, notarized, airtight. You now hold more power than your father and Noah combined." The world spun around me. The very company my father proudly claimed as his sole achievement belonged to me, Ryan continued. "But she left one crucial instruction. When you reveal the truth, choose the right moment. She believed you would know when to turn your silence into the loudest voice." I folded the letter, clutching it to my chest as tears spilled freely. My whole life I had been cast aside, ridiculed, dismissed as an afterthought. But the truth was, my mother had never abandoned me. She had built a hidden shield around me, waiting for the day I was strong enough to step forward. And that day was closer than ever. Chapter 4. The Truth Unveiled Amidst the Glittering Party. The night my father held his retirement celebration, I knew it wouldn't just be an ordinary farewell. He intended to turn it into Noah's coronation, a moment for the entire city to witness the worthy heir stepping into the throne of Hammond Industries. What no one expected was that I, too, had prepared for a different kind of announcement. For 3 weeks after receiving my mother's letter from Ryan, I wrestled with the decision countless times. I could have kept this secret to myself, waiting until after father's death, or negotiated quietly behind closed doors. But every time I closed my eyes, I heard Noah's mocking laughter and father's cruel jibe from the last party. I remembered my mother's gaunt face, her trembling hand, as she said, "If they make you feel small, do not beg. Rise above them." I realized silence had stretched on too long. It was time for them to face the truth. The party that night was held at the same Riverside Hotel, in its grandest ballroom, adorned with fresh flowers and dazzling lights. Hundreds of guests filled the room, business associates, longtime partners, even local politicians. I wore a simple black dress, understated but elegant. I knew tonight the light wouldn't come from the gown. It would come from the truth I carried. The event unfolded like theater. Father took the stage, recounting his triumphs, then proudly introduced Noah as the bright future of Hammond Industries. The crowd erupted in applause. Noah stepped forward, shaking hands, embracing guests, his smile blazing like a star on stage. I sat silently, swirling wine in my glass. Across the room, I saw Ryan, his leather briefcase beside him. When our eyes met, he gave a subtle nod. The time had come. Just as father finished praising Noah, Ryan stepped forward, his voice clear and commanding. "Pardon the interruption. As the Hammond family's lawyer for over 20 years, I have an important document to present to everyone here." The room fell silent. Father's brows furrowed in confusion. Noah scowled, irritated that his golden moment was being interrupted. Ryan placed a large yellow envelope on the podium, broke the seal, and spoke with solemn authority. "This is the final will and testament of Mrs. Elena Hammond. drafted 6 months before her passing, notarized and certified and trusted to me under her explicit instructions. The atmosphere froze. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Well, wasn't that settled 3 years ago? Father's voice thundered, straining to regain control. Ryan. What is the meaning of this? I already hold the legal will on record, Ryan replied calmly. Yes, but that document was superseded by this one. This reflects Mrs. Hammond's true and final wishes. Then he began to read. I, Elena Marie Hammond, of sound mind, declare this to be my final will and testament. I leave all my assets, properties, and the majority of Hammond Industries shares to my daughter, Sophia Elena Hammond. The silence was deafening, then gasps filled the room. Some mouths hung open, others covered in shock. A wine glass shattered against the floor, its sharp crack punctuating the moment Ryan declared the numbers. Transferred shares 62%, meaning controlling power over Hammond Industries now belongs to Sophia Hammond. I drew a deep breath, steadying a calm smile. Father's face turned crimson, his eyes blazing. He roared, Impossible, Elena would never do this. This is a forgery. Noah sprang to his feet, pointing a trembling finger at me. You manipulated her when she was sick, when her mind was gone. You deceived the whole family before I could respond. Ryan cut in, his tone sharp as a blade. This document was signed before 3 independent witnesses, including Mrs. Hammond's personal physician, who certified her mental state as completely sound. The whispers swelled like waves. Father was drenched in sweat, Noah biting his lip in rage, while I, for the first time in my life, did not bow my head. Ryan went on, drawing out a handwritten letter from Mother, reading aloud before, All my beloved daughter, I leave everything to you, not out of pity, but out of recognition. You are the only one who ever saw me as a person, not just a role in this family. You stayed by my side, proving you are worthy. Each word sliced through the years of lies like a blade. I saw the stares shift from scorn to astonishment, from curiosity to respect. I walked to the podium and looked directly at my father and brother. My voice was low, steady, unshakable. Mother chose me. You may never acknowledge it, but she saw me. And from this moment on, Hammond Industries belongs to me. The room fell into heavy silence. Then gradually scattered applause began. Not everyone, but enough for me to know the truth was finally being respected. That night, as I walked out of the ballroom, I knew I was no longer the useless daughter in my family's story. I was the heir to my mother's legacy, and for the first time in my life, I felt the weight and clarity of my own power. Chapter 5. The Legal Battle. The next morning, as soon as I woke up, my phone buzzed relentlessly. On the screen, 12 missed calls from Father. I stared at it, flashing on and off, until the 13th call finally made me answer. His voice was hoarse, strained, dripping with tension. Sophia last night was just a misunderstanding. Your mother, she surely didn't know what she was signing. Meet with me. We'll talk this over as a family. I closed my eyes, recalling the fury in his gaze when the will was read aloud. Family. What kind of family turns its daughter into a public joke? I inhaled sharply. Mother knew exactly what she was doing, Father. And you know she was never someone to be manipulated. If you want to talk, meet me at Ryan's office at 10. There was silence on the line, then his voice low and sharp. Fine. The meeting that day felt more like a duel than a discussion. Father sat flanked by his personal lawyer, Brennan, while Ryan and I sat across from them. Noah walked in 5 minutes late, wearing his usual mask of false confidence, but his eyes burned with hatred when they met mine. Brennan began in the smooth tone of someone accustomed to bending negotiations his way. Although the will appears legitimate, we believe there is cause to question Mrs. Elena's mental capacity during her final months. Pancreatic cancer coupled with strong painkillers could have impaired her ability to make rational decisions. I looked him square in the eye, my voice calm, and even Dr. Morrison, who treated my mother directly, certified her mental state as sound. Are you prepared to drag him into court to testify? Otherwise, Brennan faltered, then shifted tactics. We could also pursue undue influence. Sophia, as the caregiver, you may have pressured your mother to alter her will in your favor. This time Ryan spoke, his voice cutting like steel. That argument won't hold. The paperwork is airtight, certified, witness notarized. If you want a court battle, we'll be ready. Father slammed his hand down on the table. This is betrayal. I built Hammond Industries with my bare hands. Only to see it stolen by a daughter, I cut him off, my voice steady, no longer trembling. Do you remember how many times Mother poured her savings into the company? How many times she quietly bought shares while you dismissed it as small change? She was the one who helped turn Hammond into Industries. You always said it was your company, but the truth is, it was never yours alone. Noah shot up, his face crimson. You don't understand anything about business. This company needs a strong man, a leader with an MBA like me. You think you're capable? I met his glare, a calm certainty spreading through me. It isn't about a degree. It isn't about being a man. It's about effort, resilience, and vision. And Mother knew exactly who had those. The room grew heavy, thick with silence. I saw Father's hand tremble as he clenched his fist. He knew he was losing, yet he still clung to scraps of power. The next 3 months dragged into a grueling war. Father assembled an army of lawyers hurling accusations, forged signatures, coercion of a dying woman, even hiring private investigators to dig into my life, hoping to uncover a crack. Noah paraded himself in the local papers, posing as the son robbed of his inheritance, spouting about the injustice of an envious sister being handed unearned power. But the truth had its own weight. Ryan submitted hundreds of pages of evidence to the court, medical certifications of Mother's mental clarity witness testimonies, notarized records, and most damning of all, stacks of documents proving that Mother had steadily purchased additional shares for years under her own name and mine. Every step was recorded, certified, legal. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call from the very investigator Father had hired. His voice was apologetic, almost reverent. I have to tell you, Miss Hammond, in all my career, I've never seen a case file this watertight. Your mother was truly an extraordinary woman. I sat, frozen tears spilling down my cheeks. For the first time, someone outside the family acknowledged my mother's contribution, not Father's, not Noah's, but hers. Finally, after 3 months of bitter disputes, the judge delivered the verdict. Elena Hammond's will was valid. All her assets, including 62% of Hammond Industries, legally belonged to me, Sophia Hammond. Father slumped in his seat, defeated. Noah slammed his fist against the table, face twisted with rage. As for me, I simply took a deep breath. Not because the victory came easily, but because I knew Mother had been right. Silence can be a form of strength if you know how to break it at the right moment. But I also understood the battle had only begun. Controlling the company was one thing. Keeping it alive, growing it, and proving I was worthy, that would be the true test waiting ahead. Chapter 6. The First Days at Hammond Industries. On my first day, walking into Hammond Industries as the majority shareholder, it felt like I was balancing on a tightrope strung between skyscrapers. One wrong step and I could plummet into the abyss. Yet at the same time, a rush of freedom surged through me. For the first time, I was no longer the outsider daughter. The grand lobby was as familiar as the cracks in its marble floor. I had walked through it hundreds of times, but today was different. The receptionist, who had always greeted me with a polite smile, suddenly sprang to her feet, her voice trembling. "Good morning, Ms. Hammond." Chairwoman Hammond. I nodded with a faint smile. For the first time, that title rang out clearly, undeniably mine. But not everyone welcomed me. When I entered the boardroom, the atmosphere was heavy. I felt the weight of their doubtful stares, the silent calculations in their eyes. They had grown used to Noah Male Wharton MBA, arrogant and confident. To them, I was still the daughter mocked at the retirement party. I stood before them, my voice steady. I know many of you doubt my ability, but understand this, I'm not here by chance. My mother prepared me for this role for years, and I will not let her down. The words didn't earn instant trust. I knew trust had to be built brick by brick through action. In the days that followed, I threw myself into work as if fatigue didn't exist. I didn't start on the 20th floor with the leather chair and gleaming glass windows. I started in the warehouse. I walked along the production lines, shook hands with workers, asked about their conditions. Tommy, an older worker, looked shocked when I asked about broken machinery. No Hammond has ever asked us about that before. I smiled. From now on, that changes. I went to the accounting office where Janet had been carrying the load of 2 people for 3 years because Noah refused to hire extra staff to save costs. I asked directly, "Would you like an assistant?" Her eyes filled with tears. I've waited so long for someone to ask me that. Slowly, the hidden cracks appeared everywhere, the maintenance team forced to keep outdated machines running. Maria in customer service, fluent in 4 languages, but never considered for promotion. The marketing department where my past ideas had been brushed aside because they didn't fit Noah's vision. I knew exactly what I needed to do. Give a voice to those who had never been heard. A week later, I organized a company-wide meeting, the first time employees from every department were invited to speak. Standing at the podium before more than 200 people, I raised my voice, no longer trembling. I know what it feels like to be belittled, to be laughed at in your own family. But today I am here not for revenge, but to prove that true worth comes from perseverance and effort. From this day forward, Hammond Industries will be a place where anyone, regardless of background, is recognized if they have the talent. The applause was thunderous, not polite, not forced, but real. It echoed powerful and relentless. I felt my spine straighten, warmth rising in my chest. Of course, the path was not easy. Some old executives resisted in silence, sending emails demanding the preservation of Noah's methods in the name of stability. But I had learned from Mother, silence is not weakness. I documented each objection, dismantled them with data, and countered directly in board meetings. When they claimed there was no budget to replace old equipment, I presented annual repair costs that exceeded the price of new machines. When they claimed women could not lead international expansion, I had Maria present her plan to enter the Latin American market, a strategy so sharp it brought the entire boardroom to its feet in applause. On my first day, I had been met with doubt, but within weeks I saw their eyes change. Suspicion became curiosity. Curiosity turned into respect. At night, back in my small apartment, I looked again at Mother's letter, now framed on my desk. Her words burned into my memory. Justice deserves an audience. I smiled. My audience now wasn't just the family that once ridiculed me. My audience was the hundreds of people in this company, and I would show them fairness isn't a dream. It can be real if you have the strength to make it so. Chapter 7. Noah's Counterattack. I thought after the court's verdict, Noah would finally accept reality, but I was wrong. My brother didn't know the meaning of defeat. As I began my reforms in the company, whispers started drifting through cocktail parties and closed-door meetings I wasn't invited to. And every rumor had one thing in common: Noah's name. He still paraded himself in the media, painting the image of the rightful son robbed of his inheritance. In a local paper interview, his voice was smooth, honeyed. I only want to protect my father's legacy. It's a shame when certain people in the family put personal gain above tradition. Every time I read those lines, I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Family in their eyes, I had always been the useless one. Without Mother's will, would they have ever acknowledged me as part of that so-called tradition? But Noah didn't stop at complaining to the press. He began contacting minor shareholders, promising that if he returned to power, profits would soar and dividends would overflow. Some were swayed. I knew because a few of Mother's old allies called me, telling me directly that Noah was gathering an opposition faction. The climax came one Monday morning. As I entered the office, I found an anonymous email circulating internally. Sophia is nothing but an amateur handed power by sheer luck. The company will collapse under her leadership. I read it calmly, no longer angered as I once would have been, because I recognized it instantly as Noah's signature. The phrasing, the emphasis on amateur, the very same word he once sneered at me with during the Chamber of Commerce dinner. That evening I received an unexpected call. It was Jessica, my old friend, who had witnessed all the years my family had scorned me. Her voice trembled. "Sophia, I was at a dinner tonight. Noah was there. I overheard him bragging that a few senior executives are already backing him. He plans to call for a vote of no confidence against you." I clenched the phone tighter, but my voice remained steady. "Thank you, Jess. I know." That night I didn't sleep. I opened Mother's letter again, her words echoing. "Don't beg them to see you. Make it impossible for them to ignore you." The next morning, I summoned an emergency meeting with the entire board of directors and major shareholders. Noah showed up, too immaculately dressed, his smug smile radiating. He sat across from me like a man poised to reclaim a throne. I began the meeting by projecting the latest numbers: quarterly revenue up 18%, customer retention up 25%, and employee satisfaction at the highest point in a decade. With each statistic, each chart flashing on the screen, I watched Noah's face tighten, his confidence cracking. These results, I declared, are the product of collaboration, of listening to the people who were once ignored. Hammond Industries is no longer a stage for ego. It is a place where every effort is recognized. As soon as I finished, Noah shot to his feet, slamming the table. "Those numbers can be inflated. I have proof. Sophia is unfit. This company is being driven into the ground." He reached into his case, ready to pull out papers, but I was already prepared. Sliding a USB into the screen, I played an audio recording. Noah drunk at a party with minor shareholders promising, "Once I'm back, I'll sell shares to an outside conglomerate. We'll split the profits. That clueless girl won't know a thing." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Noah froze his face, draining pale. I met his eyes, calm and unflinching. "You call me an amateur, but even an amateur knows how to protect this company from betrayal." Silence blanketed the room. Then an elder shareholder rose, his voice sharp. "I cast my vote for Sophia because she proves herself with action, not empty promises." One by one, nods followed. Voices of agreement echoed. The vote ended in a landslide. Sophia retained absolute control. Noah quietly gathered his papers, his mouth clamped shut. As he walked out, he cast me a venomous look filled with hate, but I only smiled, because I knew this battle was mine, not won by inheritance alone, but by earning the trust of those who once doubted me. That night, back in my small apartment, I poured myself a glass of wine and gazed out at the glowing city. I whispered softly, "Mother, I did it. I protected what you left me, and I will go even further." Chapter 8. Rebuilding Mother's Legacy. After that decisive vote, Noah disappeared from the company. No more bitter glares across the boardroom. No more whispers of sabotage lurking in the halls. But I knew that victory was only the beginning. If Hammond Industries was to survive and thrive, I had to shape it into a company my mother would be proud of. I began with listening. For weeks, I walked through every department, not just holding meetings in the executive suites, but going down to the warehouses, the production lines, the customer service desks. I sat with them during lunch breaks, ate the same boxed meals, and listened to their stories about their work, their exhaustion, and their frustrations that no one had ever bothered to ask about. One afternoon, Maria, the young woman, fluent in 4 languages from customer service, timidly handed me a folder. "I once drafted a plan to expand into the Latin American market," she whispered, "but Noah said it wasn't needed. I just wanted you to take a look." I opened it and read straight through. Her plan was detailed, strategic, complete with data-driven projections. I looked at Maria and smiled. "From today, you're head of international market development." Her eyes filled with tears. To me, it was a simple decision. To her, it was a door opening into an entirely new future. And in that moment, I realized giving the right opportunity is the truest power of leadership. I also called Janet from accounting. After years of carrying double the workload without recognition, I approved the hire of an assistant for her immediately. When she received the decision, I saw her weary shoulders straighten for the first time in years. She held my hand trembling as she said, "Thank you, Sophia." I thought I would have to bear this burden until retirement. Small actions, yet they created waves of change. The atmosphere across the company began to shift. Employees came to work smiling, their eyes brighter, their voices filled with renewed energy. And most importantly, they began to believe their voices mattered. I knew Mother would be smiling if she saw this. She had written in her letter, "Show them you are not only capable of surviving, but of creating a space where others can shine." I also changed how decisions were made. No longer would a handful of men at dinner tables dictate everything, while the rest were treated as tools. I established innovation groups where anyone could pitch ideas. Some of the most impactful suggestions came from warehouse workers' proposals that ended up saving hundreds of thousands in operating costs. 3 months later, the financial report showed profits up 20%. But what made me prouder was the record-high employee satisfaction index. Walking through the lobby one day, someone stopped me and said, "Ms. Sophia, for the first time, Hammond Industries feels like it belongs to all of us, not just to a family dynasty." Those words choked me up, because that was Mother's true legacy, not merely wealth, but a company that created value for the people who gave their lives to it. I remember one evening after a long day sitting alone in my office. Mother's photo on my desk seemed to watch over every step I took. I whispered, "Mother, I'm fulfilling your wish. Hammond Industries is no longer Father's and Noah's fortress. It has become the home of hundreds of others." Tears slipped down my cheeks, but this time they weren't born of humiliation. They were tears of relief, of pride. And yet I knew Noah hadn't given up. A man raised in privilege doesn't surrender easily. But this time I wasn't afraid. I had the truth, I had the company standing behind me, and above all I had the faith that Mother was still walking this path beside me. Chapter 9. Noah's desperate return. I thought that, after his humiliating defeat in the boardroom, Noah would fade into silence, but I underestimated his pride. For Noah losing to me wasn't just about the company. It was the collapse of the image he had carried his whole life, the perfect heir. 3 months later, Noah appeared at the door of my apartment. He held a bottle of expensive wine and wore a forced smile. I opened the door, standing quietly, waiting for him to speak. "Sophia," he began, his tone unusually gentle, "I think we've gone too far. Family is still family. You need someone with experience, someone who knows how to manage the old networks." I folded my arms, calm and steady. "You mean, you want back into the company?" Noah nodded, his smile trembling at the edges. "Just as an advisor. You're still young and inexperienced. I can help you avoid mistakes." I laughed, short, sharp, dry. "An advisor? You mean a shadow clinging to me until you can steal everything back, Noah. If you had stood by me just once, even once, things might have been different." He froze. For a moment, confusion flickered in his eyes, quickly smothered by anger. "Do you really think you deserve that position without Mother's will? You'd be nothing." I stepped closer, meeting his gaze without flinching. "You're wrong. The will didn't give me strength. It simply revealed the truth you and Father tried to bury, that I was strong enough to stand on my own." His fists clenched, then slowly loosened as he exhaled. In his eyes I saw not only rage but fear. He knew power had slipped from him forever. The next day, Noah made an appearance at a major business event in the city. Dressed in a sleek suit, he tried to impress the old partners. But news had traveled fast about his failed coup, about his promises to sell the company to outsiders. People listened to him, but their eyes brimmed only with suspicion. I was there too, standing at the podium as the new CEO. When I walked onto the stage, applause thundered. I spotted Noah among the crowd, his face stiff as stone. Hammond Industries, I declared, or as it is now, Elena and Company, is no longer a playground for privilege. Here, ability and dedication come first, and anyone who disrespects that will have no place here. The applause grew even louder, roaring like a wave. In that moment, I knew Noah was utterly defeated. Not because of a will, not because of shares, but because of trust, something he could never earn. As I left the hall, Noah tried to block my path, his voice trembling with desperation. "Sophia, do you really mean to cut me off completely? We're blood." I stopped staring at him for a long moment. Blood means nothing if you see me as a thorn to be ripped out. The sister you once mocked at the retirement party, she's dead. All that's left is me, and I will never again live as your shadow. I walked away, leaving Noah standing alone, that bottle of wine in his hand, looking cheap and out of place, nothing more than a discarded prop. That was the last time I ever looked at him as an heir. From then on, he was just a man out of place, dragging his tired story of a stolen throne everywhere he went, a story no one cared to hear anymore. As for me, I kept moving forward down the path of my own making. And for the first time, I realized my silence was the heaviest sentence I could ever pass on them. Chapter 10. The final voice belongs to me. After Noah walked away in bitterness, I thought life might grant me some peace. But the truth is, when one door closes, another opens, and this time it opened onto a stage I had never dared to dream of. One Monday morning, I received an invitation from the Regional Business Association. They wanted me as the keynote speaker at their annual conference before an audience of more than 300 senior executives. I remembered sitting in that hall years ago, invisible, listening to speeches I never believed I'd give, and now they wanted to hear my story. I walked onto the stage with the microphone in hand. The spotlights blinded me from seeing every face, but I could feel every gaze fixed on me. In the past, whenever I stood before a crowd, I fought to keep my voice steady to hide the tremor in my hands. But this time, there was no pretending. I stood there armed with confidence. Confidence forged through years of humiliation, sleepless nights, and my mother's last words. "Good morning," I began firmly. "My name is Sophia Elena Hammond, a name that, for years, even within my own family, was turned into a joke." The hall fell silent. I drew a deep breath, then continued. "But today, I am not here to speak of wounds. I am here to show you that no one has the right to define our worth except ourselves." I told them about the years caring for my mother while my father and brother chased profits and cocktail parties. I told them about the times I was humiliated in public, from my mother's funeral to my father's retirement party. And finally, I told them about my mother's will, the proof that she had always seen in me what the world refused to acknowledge. When I paused, the hall was still as if holding its breath with me. Then the applause erupted, thunderous, genuine, resounding. And for the first time in my life, I no longer felt the need to prove anything. I simply was myself. In the months that followed, the company continued to grow. But more than profits, what made me proud was that my mother's legacy lived in every decision I made. The scholarship fund in her name welcomed its first recipients, young women who had been pushed aside because someone decided they weren't good enough or not fit for business. As I handed them their checks, I saw myself in them, a Sophia who was once small but had risen. "My father," eventually called. His voice was rough, perhaps from age, perhaps from tears. He said only, "You're more like your mother than I ever realized, stronger, more patient, and wiser than me." I was silent for a few seconds, then answered, "No, Father. I'm not like her. I am her continuation, and I will go further than you or Noah ever imagined." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was release. I no longer needed his recognition. I had already recognized myself. On the day the company officially changed its name to Elena and Company, I stood before headquarters gazing at the glowing letters across the glass facade. Reporters asked me why I chose that name. I simply smiled because she built it with us, but was never acknowledged. It's time the world knew the truth. That evening, I carried flowers alone to the cemetery, laying them at my mother's grave. I whispered, "Mother, at last I found my voice, and I promise it will never be silenced again." A gentle breeze stirred, petals quivering as if she were smiling. For the first time in years, I felt true peace. I realized the greatest victory wasn't reclaiming the company, nor toppling Father and Noah. The real victory was becoming the woman my mother always believed I could be, and that was the most satisfying ending of my life. I once thought my happiest ending would be earning recognition from my father and brother, but I was wrong. The true victory wasn't reclaiming the company. It wasn't forcing Noah and my father to bow their heads. It was becoming a strong, independent woman worthy of my own value. Now, every time I lift my head and see the glowing sign, Elena and Company, on the building, I know my mother is smiling, and I smile too. Because at last I am no longer the shadow in my family. I have become myself. If you believe every woman deserves respect, a voice, and a fair chance, hit that like button share. The moment that felt most satisfying to you in this story down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Scarlet Vows, so together we can spread more stories of justice, revenge, and empowerment.